Hi, good afternoon. My name is Super Apostle Baksay. I am Super Apostle of Supreme King Jesus Christ in the Church of Jesus Christ of Little Saints, centered in Salt Lake City in Utah, in U.S. Oh, pardon. Actually, the Church of Jesus Christ of Little Saints is centered here in England, in the royal capital London, royal capital of England, and also in Salt Lake City in Utah, in U.S. The I Super Apostle Baksay Ivo as the Super Apostle of Supreme King Jesus Christ in the Church of Jesus Christ of all saints. I'm working on a project by the plan that I Super Apostle Baksay Ivo as Super Apostle of Supreme King Jesus Christ in the Church of Jesus Christ of all saints. I'm working on members of the Church of Jesus Christ of all saints supposed to send me as president and supposed to stand beside me or after me into highest heaven in this very time, in this very moment. So I actually am super postal and expecting great light of highest heaven with the escort flow and escort angels escorting me straight into highest heaven. So I believe that Jesus Christ was hearing my prayers and that He was forgiving me and He's granting me right now the forgiveness and the glory of Ascension. Beauty and glory all at once. So let us look forward. We might have glory. So in the meantime, until the cloud of ascension will take me far to high heaven, let us think how can we please Supreme Yahweh in the name of Supreme King Jesus Christ? How can we do their will? So we realize that the church is now very great. We have 2,300 million of faithful disciples of Supreme King Jesus Christ that declare that they belong to Jesus Christ and that they are therefore of Jesus Christ, that they are Jesus Christ. So we have very many. Now, in the Church of Jesus Christ, a little live saint centered here in London, in Royal Capital England, and in Salt Lake City in Utah, in US, we have also a number that's approximately 17 million of faithful disciples of Jesus Christ that are named saints. And these also would like to heaven. But at the same time, I realized that we don't have as valuable last will. So last will is something that Jesus Christ is organizing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we need, I feel, that we need to do something for Lord Jesus Christ. We need to adopt the gospel personally, and we need to have it as activity of the church, maybe straight as children investing in a church with missionaries, under the leadership of missionaries, and that they will accept the gospel as their last will. And this shall be added maybe semi-annually at a time of general conference or in between sometimes. Also can be gradually added. So we might have plenty of editorial activities on our last will that shall be really perfect. So last will is something similar as Gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, my Gospel of Jesus Christ is this, and that Jesus Christ was sent from highest heaven as great Yahweh to earth to administer to us translation of our souls into the glory of Supreme Elohim, that is His Father, and of Supreme Yahweh, that is only begotten in flesh, and was born in Nazareth and had a birth in Bethlehem. And as Jesus was persuading us and was accomplishing His last will, the logic of our thinking, of Christianity, then He was exemplary ascending into highest heaven to stay there for all eternity. So that's what we now have is the option for us also to accomplish such a last will. Jesus was setting for such an adaptation or essence from the gospel of Supreme King Jesus Christ. So we now know what gospel of Jesus Christ is. Jesus was coming to forgive us, and by forgiven, it might ascend to highest heaven. Now, that might have unity with Jesus, we need to acknowledge that Jesus Christ is infinite and eternal, and therefore He as infinite eternal has got infinite and eternal word. And if we ask Him to be forgiven, that's what Jesus Christ is actually proposing, that we ask Jesus to be forgiven. And if he forgives us by his influence in the word, we are forgiven. That means also that Jesus can have always comfort constantly. I don't need to have anything else, just comfort, and can grant us the same right. They have always comfort. So we realize that this last will shall maybe be as a constitution, but it shall be our highest law, as we have the Charter of Human Rights and Religious Freedom became adopted as our personal religion, and Median set it as the highest law by the spirit of globalization, and it can be also as our hymn of life and hymn of eternal life. Did we ever hear the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota that lives in Central or in North America, United States of America, Central of the United States of America, or certain west, north of the United States of America, or northwest of the United States of America? They eventually, and many other tribes of American Indians, it was believing that they shall learn a hymn of life that they were keeping all their life to have eternal life, and they was occasionally singing, and it was letting them feel peaceful and united with God. So maybe no one else could learn that hymn except a number like 144,000 of people. And now we have something else here, something that John the Revelator was revealing to us. And yes, we will organize as a constitution that can be also accepted as a texture in such a hymn. So we will, as we sing the hymn, ascend to high heaven. What we actually thought as a first principle is the dignity, as in Charter of Human Rights and Religious Freedom, the International Ratified Charter of Human Rights and Religious Freedom, or International Charter of Basic Human Rights and Religious Freedom. The dignity is number one, and we propose that dignity will recognize as a word distinguishing honor. So we actually need a special source of honor that we may name also dignity, and this honor is for us the ascension into highest heaven. Super Apostle Baksay with the Church of Jesus Christ, who is there? So the dignity is ascension to highest heaven. So that's the human right number one, and religious freedom. And the second is the right to marry. So that's what we will never prohibit to anyone. We will always encourage the people to marry, and we will always bless for attempt of anyone to marry. This marriage shall be some sort of activity where we are mindful of the first rule of our last will of our constitution, and that is the actual dignity or right to ascend to high heaven, and I mean to love God first with all the heart and mind and strength. First and highest. Now, the second the commandment or second paragraph in our constitution or in our hymn of life, eternal life, is the true order of prayer when male and female are in some sort of hug, maybe, or in some sort of like a wedding figure. So that's actually our option to set some sort of stratagem to be saved, or rule to be saved from this world to the celestial world in the form of marriage, the eternal celestial marriage. Third paragraph is to do the same for children. So children are prepared to ascend to heaven, to have the honor, to have the dignity, to have their fulfilled. So they'll learn how to love the God first and the highest with all the heart, mind, strength. And they'll learn to marry, to have a celestial wedding, and like a true order of prayer to God, and to ascend to heaven, and to rear their children's soul. That's the third paragraph of our hymn, or of our constitution. That is a new constitution of Jesus Christ. It is a supreme constitution. So we are actually supreme novelizers of the constitution of supreme Jesus Christ. Then we have here a fourth paragraph of the government of reprisal. As we want to ascend to highest heaven, we would like to create the highest heaven. We are creators of our destiny. So we would like now to ascend to highest heaven. So they are creation of our destiny. And we would like to persuade Heavenly Father that it is now or actually early. And if we see anyone struggling to ascend to highest heaven, we send him helpers like angels. So I, for instance, now need my wife to come. So we see desire to ascend to heaven. He wants now a lot of escort to appear with escort angels, and he struggles so. So in this world, right, we need to send a spirit helper. That will be his wife. So she shall look approximately as the most plastic and most fruitful looking blonde with blue eyes, approximately a smile. Uh, like a supreme dental card, as well as that should be exciting about the Ascension. Now we have here the that's approximately appraisal, but appraisals might be other appraisal, plenty of appraisal that we might choose to govern by, and it needs to be some sort of government that is specified. This is number 5, and this number 4. This number 4. So this is supposed to be some sort of like a Sabbath observant government, Sabbath observant, and Sabbath government govern, and Sabbath in form of appraisal. So don't to be any servitude, neither any slavery. All the services are also participative. Only if somebody asks, they might have directive. And to avoid anything there is not celestial, we can do some manipulation, but not such manipulation as, for instance, the Nazis fascists of Utah of the criminal group named Thomas Spencer Monzon, a very dangerous and very precise organized criminal leader, Thomas Spencer Monzon. He was doing manipulation, manipulative leadership that was actually criminal. So that not to criminality. So we hope that this criminal Thomas Spencer Monzon will repent from his sins and from his laziness of this nuclear missile system network and a laser artillery network of American Navy, Air Force, and Army, and his former American Second World War hero um, will therefore be not a criminal anymore, right? Neither an abuser or dictator or some sort of a dangerous criminal, but a tyrant. But if he will rather become a person of restitution, since those Wild West Brigham Young American wars, and then come it included the North against South American War of Brigham Young, and then come maybe the First World War that was maybe by Joseph F. Smith, and then comes the Second World War by Herbert Grant, right? And then we have all American Mormon wars nicely situated. Then comes Korea, maybe Cambodia, maybe Vietnam, and then come the actual more of Cold War and more of sort of tightly surrounding Soviet Union, Bolshevik, with this nuclear missile system, and gradually also laser artilleries, and we see that Russia was really very affected. We don't know how many people killed there by each other from the fear for American Mormon terror. And they'll take the American African bestias. They look like people with their machine gun, and then they will kill the Russians for a long time. They're like in Yugoslavia. So that's what we actually hope that we will not have, or in Afghanistan or in Iraq. So that's what we hope that we will not have the American African bestias that look like people will not come into Russia. Russians going to be afraid. But in between what's happening, the Russians were so actually afraid that we was noting that not only Yugoslavia was killing each other for Americans, uh, but there was not only Iraq trying to kill each other, the people that are afraid. So that's what we was having in Ukraine too. In Ukraine, we also realized that there was killing each other in some sort of civil war setting until they was invaded Ukraine by Russians, and they were then killing themselves, Ukrainians and Russians between each other. And then a third kind of North Atlantic organization with Americans invading Ukraine as well, and maybe killing each other. We weren't actually sure what everything was happening there. We was quite scared because all Europe was scared because Ukraine was disappointing rockets that could finish Europe completely as a community. So they was having those nuclear rockets that they could really turn nuclear war, and that's what we would more like to have. So we was actually hoping to pray that we might have peace, and that's what I hope. We might have American Mormons like Mormon repenting from this constant war into the peace, because we want ascend to high heaven. So if anybody doesn't know what is happening, it's happening that we have a crazy criminal Mongol in leadership of most valuable organization named Church of Jesus Christ, this kingdom of heaven on earth, and he, as crazy criminal and Thomas Morton, is harassing people by the military influence that is by the authority of president of the church. Possible so far. And we need to ask Jesus Christ that instead of this military harassment and military tyranny, fascistic community of the Nazi Utah Mormons, that we might have rather the peace, beauty, and glory of translation also the God of Supreme Elohim, Supreme Yahweh, and ascension to highest heaven. Right now, so that's what we have. Now the next word we actually ought to achieve is to recognize that we shall honor our parents. So we may was ever seeing that our parents shall organize the last will, it shall be the ascension. So if we was having birth to parents that as we was turning approximately 12 or 18 and they didn't have a proper last will, they was maybe just having some funeral insurance to have money for the coffin if they eventually die, or the partial cemetery, or the graveyard, or grave itself, the materials and the work. It is inclusive funeral services and burial services. So therefore, we need to help our parents. So that's the most glorious honor and dignity what we could have to our parents, is to help them to prepare their last will. That instead of anything else, our parents will write in their last will that they want to ascend to heaven right now or exceeding early, so we can take care of children by any other way as living with parents. Because parents went to high heaven, the parents can also take children with them to high heaven, or they will trust children to someone that also wants to ascend to heaven, was not as lucky so far. So that's how we have our community is so beautiful. There's always someone outstanding, except outstanding instead of anything else. Now, so this is regarding the honor of parents. We have there also the next steps from these glorious paragraphs that we deducted from the Ten Commandments that great Yahweh, Jesus Christ, was granting to Moses, and that was later interpreted also by some group that was running the Alma somewhere in a place of the land of Nephi. It was northern from the land of hierarchy, it's described in the Book of Mormon. This is another testament of Jesus Christ from America, the continent of Central America. And they also was having those Ten Commandments of Jesus Christ, of Yahweh, that was given to Moses, and they took that with them on such a brass plate or maybe golden plates from Jerusalem, just a few years before Nebuchadnezzar, with his great, glorious, and famous military from Babylonian Empire, invaded the Jerusalem and robbed the temple and was taking Israelites captive. This is happening approximately 600 years before something for Jesus Christ was having birth in Bethlehem. As we know, Jesus Christ was only begotten flesh and was begotten, announced in Nazareth. So 600 years there was happening that the Jews was mainly reigning in Israel because in 700 years before Jesus Christ was born, the Jews was actually spoiling themselves with Assyrians that are westward. The empire was westward from Babylonian, and they was actually Jews and Assyrians was sacrificing the Ephraim and tried to associate with, summoned to captivity to Greece and to Rome, where initially the Ephraim went. So we actually have here some perspective from the history. There was from posterity of Enoch several that was ascended to heaven. So it was mentioned in Moses that there is such a scripture, especially by Joseph Smith, that was reportedly by the president of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 21st century. That Joseph Smith was killed in country jail after some sort of like a brief history of the city of Nauvoo, when Joseph was eventually refusing to move to the Rocky Mountains that was far west in Indian territory that was belonged to Mexicans, according to those maps of 19th century of approximately 1842-43 and beginning of 1844. Joseph Smith was actually advised by me personally and by many others to actually leave the city of Nauvoo latest by beginning of spring 1844 to leave the Rocky Mountains and to establish with Brigham Young the community there and to ascend to heaven from there. And it has been famous place that members of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was coming there to expand the United States of America and to serve American president as some sort of pioneers of the Western development in the Indian territory and the places where a Mexican country, a Mexican government was actually having their land. So that's some sort of stealing or military war stealing or robbing Mexican country or Mexican government or Mexican people of the country. These was very afraid of Americans, so that was not very difficult to steal from them. So that there was a big man was organized such a long battalion, and they went against Mexico City along the city Tucson, and was not appearing in Mexico City, but it was before the city Tucson, that is on north of Mexico City. They was actually turning to San Diego, where is a memorial building to them named Mormon Battalion. Eventually a Brigham Young. So that's really they was then having some sort of experience of gold mining, and then they was eventually winning also the territories of the Northwest from Russian Federation, the Russian Kingdom. They was turning then afterwards in some sort of communistic, socialistic Bolsheviks. Brothers and sisters, if you would like to hide heaven, we know what to do. I actually about to share with you that there is option for us to be very kind to one another and to miss equality. So there is really the most easiness for us to experience the actual kindness if we are some sort of uniform. And this uniformity there is easy to reach if we think with all the energy of our souls to love our God with all our heart and mind strength completely, and our neighbors ourselves, and to administer equality to our neighbors. So we may begin in some geographical regions, or rather, that is much better for us to administer it to the group that is ideologically the same, but also in geographic regions. So that's good if we have two types of administration. Firstly, it's by religious churches, and secondly is by governments of the countries and unions of the countries. And if we have any greater, like United Nations, there's also countries of nations of government. So that's how we should administer equality. We don't have it so far. Neither in the church. We have great differences. Some of the church members are billionaires, multi-billionaires. Some of the church members are homeless. They don't have neither fixed, neither current assets. Eventually, church was indebting by some abilities they have of the name of God. They was using the name of God in vain, and it was indebting some members. So that would be, it needs to now change. We need to repent. We need to have this emotion depending for the sins first emotion are endless. Except we make an end to them in the form of abstinence from sin and participating on activities of restitution and equalization. So equality is approximately $3,000 or 3,000 euros, which is equivalent of dollars, 2,000 euros, approximately, or 3,000 pounds sterling in England, per week, per person, as an absolute national existential minimum by responsibility of both the church where the person is religiously registered and also by the government of the country that is having geographical borders, geographical region. So if the person is in one church or the other church and cannot get anything by the church, it needs to be therefore by the government of the country. So they will have at least 3,000 per week and at absolute minimum no one to have less except they refuse officially and sign that they doesn't want to have, and nevertheless they have a right to get it later as they get a wife. But I promise you that it's good to have some money for Jesus, especially if you have a good last will. As soon as you are sent to high heaven, and it will be evident that you are in high heaven, that Heavenly Father was forgiving you and was accepting to His glory up to high heaven. Therefore, your belongings, like your bank account and your fixed income assets, to be forwarded to someone. And you can state in the last will, and you can send it as a message from to a lawyer or to local licensing team, or you can print it and put it on a wall. If anybody comes to flat up to you and sent to heaven, they'll straight away see a picture on the wall. And what is it last will and what it says, as they are all my belongings to be given, for instance, to my parents in this on earth, or to my posterity, or to my cousins, or you may just choose any organization to forward, like a charitable organization, for instance, Relief Society. We can forward our belongings to society. So we will be in highest heaven, and we will be hopefully married, right, finally, and have many children with us in heaven, and our belongings that we will leaving here, our possessions, will be forwarded to Relief Society. Or it might preside in bishopric or to any one of the filials of the Church of Jesus Christ. We have here several churches also in England and also in every country, or almost every country. And then we have there some offices that we can forward the wealth, those with wishing to submit the wealth there. That's how we can have minimum 3,000 per week in equivalent to $2,000 or 2,000 pounds sterling or 2,000 euros within the Church of Jesus Christ or in any other religion or in any other government of the country. Or in any country, United Nations, there are any other countries also there. So we now actually start to speak about the fixed assets. The current asset instead of $3,000 equivalent now fixed assets. Current asset, fixed asset. So fixed asset supposed to be about 800,000 equivalent, but if there are too many as minimum, 800,000 equivalent. If there are too many, or if people after a year are losing it with some accident, so they will have renewal of this annually. So as we weekly we are renewing the current asset minimum, fixed asset minimum, we also need to renew, and that will be annual renewal of the fixed asset. Fixed asset, that's for instance buildings, vehicles, machine, and any fixed equipment, maybe also furniture, that the man might resell again and gain on it something, yeah, of some value. So that's maybe also land or mine, right? So that's to be annually renewed if necessary. So each might have. Now, if anyone doesn't have the ability to really exceedingly goodly do, with the money, so they actually are fixed current asset, so they can actually still access the other minimum that is like emergency minimum. The man can still have, and the after year they will have also the 300,000 fixed asset, and also every week 3,000 for current asset. So that's so understandable. So this is regarding minor. Regarding planning, there needs to be a really perfect planner set for each one. Then we shall count with everything. So as we was ever speaking about honesty, we shall be really very honest people. So if anybody's got, for instance, last will, so that needs to be in our planner, that we need to think about it maybe every 24 hours, once to 24 hours, for some minutes. I need to be in our planner really stated. Now we have 10 minutes about last will. So let us check what actually ought to be in last will, and let us now check another 10 minutes about our wife. So what we do for her, and then for our children, what we do for them. And so each need to get the uniformity of the perfect planner. So we can ask them to have an early, because we need to plan our time for the future. It needs to be eternal planner, and it's eternal accepted in highest heaven. So we need to plan our ascension approximately in childhood, or in youth, in teenage, or in our 20s. So Jesus Christ is very clear stating and is recorded by Saint John the Evangelist in Gospel of Jesus Christ by or according to Saint John the Evangelist, chapter 14, verses 12 to 15. That is really good state, especially verse 12 and 13. There we are supposed to accomplish such acts as Jesus Christ, then in Ascension age 33, or greater acts, exceeding Jesus Christ's acts. Because Jesus Christ, our advocate with the Father in high heaven, and wants us to accomplish greater acts, therefore we need to ascend somewhat earlier, age 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27. And this is the order of Jesus Christ. So that's what we're supposed to have and accept. And as it belongs to kindness, that each one of us have fixed asset, current asset, and planner that is really eternal. So we might really, in English language, sometimes name enjoying or being happy or being in love. So we will feel in love, to feel a richness of our choice or decision is right. And we have many friends, therefore, that are really of most quality, most purity, most holiness, and most glory to highest heaven. Now, the third type of equality that we shall consider is quality of home. So the quality of home that also belongs to specials of equality. So first we will speak of money quality, then planner. Planner might include also journeys, and planner includes really plenty of things. And then comes the home as an extra subject, because quality of home is such a marvel, and we have many types of home. I said we can especially compare the homes of general authorities of the Church of Jesus Christ and since Joseph Smith. Nevertheless, notwithstanding, Joseph Smith was reportedly dead, and Brigham and Lawrence Snow too are reportedly dead, according to the first presidency at this time. So it seems that they are true regarding the matter. And then we had Joseph Smith, Joseph David McKay, and there was also reported that. And then after David McKay, there was Joseph Phillips Smith, Harold Billy, Spencer W. Kimball, Ezra Duff Benson, Howard W. Hunter, and Gordon P. Hinckley also reportedly dead. Now, Thomas Fitzmorgan was announcing that also a number of other general authorities was dying. There was Richard Smith and William Gordon P. Hinckley in the office, and their wives also died. Also, Francis W. Johnson Morton was in 2014 reportedly dying and was found dead. So, and they eventually buried in Denver. So that's what we have now in situation 2015. So we will now just send to heaven. What should we do? I propose equality of home will help us to be kind. So if you compare the housing and the quality of home of general authorities and the posterity, we may know how we approximately shall be housed. We also have the option of celebrities, to have such homes with celebrities. Now, if there is not sufficient of land to have such a great and glorious homes as people have, we need to apply the rule of rotation. So every half a year, all people on the earth will move. Approximately this shall be to administer equality and kindness. So approximately this shall be pattern of movement, and those who were living in the basement on the lower ground floor are immediately moving to the top floor for at least half a year. And then those who were on the top floor, one floor lower. So those who was on the first floor getting that to themselves to be at a ground floor, or over ground floor or lower. I went to the basement. It might also change. We might not need any basement flats or basement homes. So that's what we might also repair. Now we have here a number of terroristic Nazis and fascists of Utah. They are psychotronic and psychopathic too, and they are warriors, and they're fighting as a spirit, and they're fighting secretly, and they make different sorts of swearings and secret oaths, and they are really very goodly educated in language, so it's almost impossible to catch them by police officers. As police officers, they are not having as much quality. But we have more and more quality now police officers, so maybe that some detectives, together with magistrates, will get that done, that the Mormon of Utah will be actually stopped to do crime, and not do crime anymore. The criminality of Utah will stop. But I'm still Slovak, right? And I was trying to have perfect English, but we have some quality English for me, and I hope that it might be increasing quality in English language, so we might understand each other absolutely perfectly. So we will like that Utah, the people that live in Utah, we have there also someone like a governor in a state, and then we have the Mon zone, and they have the number, they have the numbers of hosts of serving spirits, and we then have them doing criminality. And that's what I actually want that we have not changed, that they will repent for criminality. Now, criminality is mentioned in a Charter of Human Rights and Religious Freedom. So example of youth criminality is, for example, Draper youth, they have such a chair, and in this together agree as the neighborhood, as they saw eating flesh and blood of animals from their farms, that they're killing animals. So they selecting one person, singing their hymns from 18th century of the Wild West in the churches, and then they're selecting the one person as a sect, and they acting that they are just a dangerous sect, and they taking the person to the jail in Draper, Utah, for anything that they were thinking themselves to take it for, and then they're killing the person there at the chair, at the troll. So this is actually trespass against human rights and freedoms. It shall not happen in the United States of America because the United States of America is not any unknown small country, and because United States of America is part of the United Nations, and the Charter of Human Rights and Freedom has been ratified in United States of America, and they're still trespassing openly, and everybody is afraid of them. And they are not just a small country, but they really have a nuclear muscle system now, and they have it worldwide and globally surrounding Russia, and Russia is afraid of them killing each other, especially in Ukraine. There was reportedly extremely great number of people dying. For me, extremely great number is 100 people killed in Ukraine. That's far too great number. So we don't want anybody hurting themselves in Ukraine. And real numbers, how many was killed just recently in 2012, 2014, and 15? There I've seen actually BBC or Sky News that showing Donetsk at sometimes, and there were so many of explosions per minute. It was only some extra counting. It was really very many, just in square mile at some places. So, so we actually thinking that we might minimize the military explosions, and then we might also repair all the houses that was damaged in Ukraine. They did hypothetical bridge that was some were saying it was up to 2 million. So that's what I actually think that we hope that it was only about together no one killed over there. The Ukraine there was really only having a sense of exercise, and there was shooting just against the empty houses or against the terrible targets. There was no hurting anyone. But if there was anybody dying, so we will now like to set the future that it might not happen anymore. That it might not be. We actually see in part in Ukraine that Napoleon was killing a number in Ukraine, and then they came fascists with Hitler, and they was killing a number, and now again it was such a similar number killed. So we said that it's starting to change. So because it was happening recently, so we said to set it for the future that in Ukraine it will be only peace and glory and expansion. It is Christian country, they have Christian churches, so that would be a reason to help them with Christianity, that they might have the quality. I heard about Utah. They are in actually in such a very sophisticated community there since 1844, pardon, 1847. 1947 in Utah, a very specific community of Christians, and there was never ever experienced the Anti War. Neither Napoleon was particularly, neither Hitler, that was absolutely impossible. That any of the SS or SA killers was getting there, or the Gestapos, and also they could not get anyone now in the start of Civil War. There was in Syria and maybe in Libya was some explosion, and it was too many for just the peaceful times. And then there was also any explosions in Ivory Coast that was similar to Civil War, and that was causing more than the number of people killed. So that's what we would like now avoid. So let us therefore seeing how how can we persuade the Utah Mormons, that are Nazis, a fascistic group of the criminal dictator Thomas Spencer Monson, they are harassing mankind with nuclear missile system network and laser gun, and cause pressure on the nation, psychopathic pressure that they had civil war and they're killing each other, and then they're invaded by the United Nations or by the American government or by the North Atlantic Organization. And that's what we would like now to change. So how can we get that? So let us think equality will be helpful, financial equality, physical asset, planet equality, compared with residential ways. Those are most wealthy to. That's planet equality, that's experience. What experience of journeys, love stories, success, right? So that that we want us into heaven, but have wedding as well, right? When it's a wedding, so we need to actually invoke those powers. And now, who's got what sorts of pleasures and how can get a pleasure? So that's what we need to set up. That we need to have really glorious pleasures experience our wedding. So. And we gradually through this experience of our glorious homes, so we also emphasize eventually the patients set on moving to law of chastity. So law of chastity and such a marvelous law. We was mentioning the wedding and marriage in second as a true word of prayer that we are bowing and serving only God, and applying to us in heaven. And now we again are there at the chastity. What can help us to be chaste? What pattern shall we use in employing professional powers? And so we was thinking that over the one man to marry one woman through word of prayer. Eventually, if we, from the scriptures and from the history, it might be still acceptable and lawful that one man, like a male of humankind, is marrying more of humankind, female than woman. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 might be still lawful. Some might have 9, maybe. Maybe fraternity is sealed with at least one, and those others they might be temporary, and then they might marry someone else. That might be still lawful. Some saying that it's impossible, but if we measure what they does for a number of pornographic movies of the adultery and different sorts of acts of breaking of the law of chastity, so I think we would rather commit wedding, and that would be really much more lawful, especially if there's someone who's intelligent to help those women to believe in Jesus Christ, to be quality person. That is much more wonderful, and to legalize is much better than to legalize marijuana. We actually was having a setting of drug-free environment, and it was only in Holland that was normally legalized marijuana. And recently in the United States of America, under the government of President Thomas Spencer in combination with Barack Obama, they was legalizing marijuana initially. And we don't know how much marijuana, but I think it's much better to set marijuana illegal, minimize the consumption of the small marijuana or food of marijuana and of its narcotic or psychotropic influence, and that we may rather turn to permit males to marry females, the human males to marry human females, the children of God, and therefore to create there some sort of easiness regarding the law of chastity to keep. So this is, if you want to keep the law of chastity, we will soon discover how to do it. It needs to be anything glorious, anything heaven-like regarding the law of chastity. It shall not be just people that are sort of abstaining from any sorts of professional employment. Even that, it shall be also permitted that people are absolutely abstaining from professional employment, even in their mind, because Jesus Christ was mentioning that absolute chastity is some sort of complete abstaining from thinking about the employment of powers. And that may happen accurate at that time. Anyone who wants to ascend to high heaven, and they absolutely are not thinking the employment of powers. If there is, anyways, a thought of procreation, we may arrogate ourselves that this influence will be slowly taken away from us. And after these glorious motions of keeping the law of chastity, I think that we shall move to judge. We have here really so much pornography by President Moses and by other organizations, and so much of adultery and so much of the trespasses against law of chastity and pornography, and so many types of pornography of the order in pornography that is online. So I started for that we will learn to be generous and forgiving. Now, generous and forgiving, that's such an ability that we shall get. We obtain generous and forgiving if we will think that we'll never ever steal from anyone. So that's what we hope that we might have the most easy and most light if we will be generous and forgiving. So when Jesus Christ ever was speaking about to forgive or to be generous and forgiving, that's what we'll make sure that we will check, because sometimes it seems that just went to the temple and like if he was destroying there some sorts of things that he was having the clothing or any sorts of like a, like a business, got dressed according to the order that they were having there in the sales, and just went through and was maybe seemingly destroying what he was having. So some sort of stealing, so that's no more useful or getting damaged. So that's when Jesus Christ was not speaking about being just. Again, that was the preaching of something else. That was to have house visible order. But as Jesus was saying to be generous in forgiving, so that's what we shall be mindful. He was saying of his Father, whatsoever regards does of the Father. I mean, we know it, I just say, and stealing, neither any damage of property or a damage of whatsoever people have, their ownerships. But yeah, we actually forgive, so that maybe that if we're forgiving others, then we may be forgiven. That's a visual thing. I'm generous in forgiving. Now we have some Orthodox families that they keep the commandments of Jesus Christ exceedingly, and they have also a number of guns to kill anyone that will take them from their ability to keep the commandments of Jesus Christ. They are really very quick to kill anybody, or they have killers stance to kill everyone if they just think that they're not to keep the commandments of Jesus Christ. So we have such families, very dangerous families, very fanatical, fascistic terrorists, and they are named also Mammons of Utah. So we need to be very careful about them because they're absolute fanatics. They say really nuclear war if somebody takes them from the ability to keep the commandments of these guys, or if somebody just thinks and can. We of course want to say they keep the commandments of Jesus Christ, and to that kindness we will find on speaking. There needs to be some sort of equity that we rather not angry with everybody, neither causing blue stains, neither fisting their arms, neither fisting their leg, neither pressing sort of like a brake on a car if you see that doesn't have a safety belt. So they hit with their head the front thing, what is the seat or even back or the window screen. Window screen if you're sitting in front. Well, that's like a punch in the head, right? So if you're in a car and the driver sees that you don't have safety belt and thinking himself, I was telling him we need to go to somewhere safety belt, dumping with his leg on a brake and and the recipient is facing and then his head on the front and without safety belt. So such things, Mormon Church of Jesus Christ will say, the endless ones. I myself was the person, the victim, that was sitting in the car and was not having a safety belt, and there was really a first presidency and sort of like a judging, and I was really organizing the other missionary was with the name tag and was really dumping on the brake and was hitting my head and was telling me, if I don't remember, he was advising me some time ago that I supposed to wear the safety belt in the car. So I think that we can we can more equitously. So I was in other occasions experiencing maybe the same with the other missionaries in Antioch. They were buying themselves ice cream, and I didn't have any money, and they had lots of money as Americans, and I was wondering how it could do it. It was a Christian community, and my parents was county officers, and my actually father-in-law, as I believe that I was adopted to Jesus Christ, and my father is God, and Jesus Christ. So the father in biblical law, Ivo Baksay, he was even the director of county offices, Department of Gathering of Israel, also has heaven, and Department of Holy Celestial Administration of Holy Celestial Wedding. I don't know, there's once more. It was Department of Gathering of Israel into has heaven, and Department of Holy Celestial Administration of Holy Celestial Endowment. of how it was a wedding of Supreme King Jesus Christ, and turning hearts of the parents, the department of returning hearts of parents to children and children to parents. And such glorious environment, so we're supposed to have lots of money. So I could have also ice cream. But I realized then that this terroristic group of Utah Mammons, they was promising only to some to have money, regardless of anything else. They were just students, and some have money, some not. And missionaries also named that some was having lots of money, some not. So some could shop the same as the others, and then still they had a lot of money afterwards. And if I was shopping with them for a moment, I was having money, but then they still had much more, and I didn't have, and I was just buying some ice cream, and I was without ice cream. And so taste the ice cream. I think is that righteous? We are together as missionaries and as companions, and we shall actually have approximately the same, and was not having the same. And or about currency. So I was actually having birth in Czechoslovak Socialist Republic, and the church was actually setting the currency that was 1 crown in our currency was well, $1 of United States of America. 1 American dollar was 30 crown or 27 crown of Slovak Republic as I went to mission. So if I was, for instance, donating to church, there was actually count in a church only as a few dollars. Even there, for me, it was an enormous money that I was normally not having on the just somewhere maybe in my saving account. And they was just donating a small portion from their money to mission, and I was also 100 times more as my nation that was doing to me much greater amount of money as to them their amount they was in the church. So we actually meeting here with some sorts of facts that helps us to understand the equality and necessity of equality, as well as the when we were speaking about equality, and we speak about chastity, and then we went to what was the next subject? Um, oh, that's generosity and forgiving. Oh, that's just need to some people are still so tyrannized by American Mormons and Mormons of Judah, and the fascistic and Nazistic attitude to obey the tyranny and dictated to Mongol. So somewhere also after some weeks of such a terror, they went actually in the streets. Yeah, it was demo. It was angry. They did not get anything right. So in a wonderful rule that we have as a last will, modern constitution of the United States of America, is influencing by the nuclear muscle system, the minds of governors in all countries, and actually the influence also with the civil wars in some countries. So that's what we would like to avoid. We would like to have only peace and ascension, and if there's any sound of weapon or any message of the battle, then it will be only message from someone from military barracks that there was not really killing anyone, there was just testing guns, somewhere in safety mode, the most security when there was really not injuring anybody. And also if there was like a battle line and there was really fighting, and they was using such equipment that was not hurting anyone. So there was this washing maybe afterwards and the clothes, and there was clothes also. That's implying that we may have, we might generous and forgiving. So as before was saying equality, but if anybody breaks the laws of equality and law of justice, this is generous and forgiving. To return to humility, that God was actually planning that also we shall ascend to heaven. So the first rule we see that it's actually in every rule later to be applicable, that the dignity is honor, and dignity and honor for us is to love God with all our heart, mind, and strength, to do the will of God, and to ascend to high heaven, to stay there for all eternity. Such a glorious translation of ourselves is possible to have, and we maybe necessitating, we maybe have a necessity to share the gospel. So we will speak about missionaries. They was actually asked perfect, but was not always perfect, right? We have on one side this nuclear missile system, genius of the United States of America, and they was having a nuclear missile network and laser artillery in this more time, and they actually dictating or sort of enslaving, putting in servitude all the other nationals of the other countries. except they have wonderful advocates. They advocate in Sweden, so Americans are saying good if they have any advocates. They might not need to experience of the companions of to do anything with them. And Chicana and beatings, right, fistings, and wrestlings. So that's what we hope that we will not have neither servitude, neither slavery, neither putting down the soul, underestimating or trying to their unworthy, can't say any other bad feeling. But through the power of the Holy Spirit, missionaries are actually having their mission to bring souls of the children of God unto Christ, or to bring images and likenesses of God that looks like the people into the church unto Christ, that they might experience translation of the soul into the glorious fulfillment of Yahweh and experience the salvation, ascension to heights in heaven in the presence of the Lord of Yahweh. And this year's paragraph number 9, we actually shall be humble and we shall acknowledge proclaim or declare or proclaim the gospel of this guy that all the talents and abilities are gifts of God. That's the humility of paragraph 9. The humility is instead of, for instance, false witness, very false witness, not. But yes, what we ought to do is acknowledge gratefully with courage that all the responsibilities are gifts of God, then to proclaim the gospel of this guy. That's first of all mission in number 9. Number 10, paragraph number 10 helps us to have perfect last will. There is a new modern novelization, a super novelization of Constitution of the United States of America, and that is also named the Order of King Jesus Christ, or Perfect Constitution of Jesus Christ, 2015. So this is the Supreme Elohim's, Supreme Yahweh's Constitution of Supreme Elohim Yahweh for citizens, residents of the United States of America, neighbors and friends, to experience translation of soul into the glory of Supreme Elohim Yahweh and the ascension into the highest heaven, in the presence of most of Supreme Elohim, most Supreme Yahweh. This is the preamble when I was hearing, preamble of the Constitution of the United States of America. That will be new, modern novelization, super novelization of Constitution of America. Why do we think of United America as Slovak citizens in the European Union, no private organization? Because we have now a United Nations network of nuclear muscle system and laser tours of United America, and we're often influenced by the terror of presidents of Jesus Christ. People don't know how to live, neither how to govern under the influence of the highest law in America, that is an old constitution since 1700 ratifications that was also admitted, added to the United States Constitution. And this together as a set of laws in America is very imperfect, and United America is a very troublous, dangerous country. There might seem it's easy there because they actually didn't have a civil war since 1800 or 60s. And also First World War and Second World War and the other wars that was following was only happening by Americans, somewhere in far countries, right? But because it was happening everything by the United States of America, by the Mormons of Utah, all these wars like First World War, Second World War, and Korea, Cambodia, and Vietnam, and Iraq, Afghanistan, and then also we was having two wars that's new happening since 2009, 2010. In 2010 and 11, they're happening such a new two wars, and I was in somewhere in Egypt, but also likely then in next neighborhood of Egypt in the actual Libya, and then there's the attack of French military massacring the ammunition storehouse in Ivory Coast, where also was a number of people injured because of this explosion in the ammunition storehouse. That was the summer in a city where eventually many people was living around, and as this missile was exploded in Ivory Coast, there was rockets flying around and eventually injuring some people. So then it was coming the civil war in Syria and then in Ukraine, and that's finally very close to the United Kingdom. It's at the borders of European Union that are sort of close, right? Ukraine seems to be very close, maybe because Slovak city there, because we have actually Africa seems too far, even though it is also on the border of the European Union. But the Ukraine seems to be very close. I think it will be also because Libya was more Islamic or communistic and socialist. So Ukraine was some more Christianity. So Ukraine, they was having government that was committed to churches all the time, um, and the liturgy and the gospel was translated into the um, Russian spoken language, and similar to Slovak and Polish and Czech, um, as this Ukrainian Kievan Russia was having the gospel translated to their own spoken language that it understood into the writing of Cyrillic in 863 of our countries. Yeah, such a marvel of victory and also Greece. That was understanding Judge Glorious happening was by agreement with those kings and governors of Ukraine and Kiev and Russia was happening. We had there a number of wars that we actually are not pleased. We want that peace, and we want the Ukrainian nation is choosing peace and glory um, instead of war. Also because this neighborhood nearby, but also mainly, actually mainly because we feel very relate also the Christians and all the images that we have some sorts of blonde with blue eyes, or blonde with green eyes, or some blonde, or some sort of European Christianity, and it is some sort of white race of Jesus Christ. So that's what we can now believe we will have. We will have a glorious peace. So the last paragraph in our constitution is actually that we shall be actually diligent. So the error was being prohibited to covet. We shall not covet anything that belongs to our neighbors. And the higher law from coveting is, from not coveting is the diligence. So diligence is actually opposite from coveting. So diligence is something we need in our constitution to be mentioned because diligence we need to everyone that lives in the country. And it is diligence in the mission charity. So all our constitution is charity. And so that's what we shall summarize in the end. We need to be diligent to be charitable. We need to be diligent in performing of the will of God, the Father. As Jesus Christ was saying, there are different stratagems how to live, and they may be all wrong except we do the will of the Father. Those may be forgiven by submitting Jesus Christ. Now, I'll most likely sing all these to you, so hopefully you will accept it as a melody of love, a melody of a wedding, and until we get here a more perfect melody and more perfect tunes, and maybe tenor, I said that we can have some more of life and more eternal life, and we can sing. Now, you only know somewhat of singing, so that much as we know, I think we can select the hymn as usual from Gospel of Jesus Christ by according to St. John's Evangelist, chapter 13, verses 33 to 35. As I have loved you, love one another. This new commandment love one another. By this shall man know that ye are my disciples, if ye have loved one to another. The friends and sisters, today was Baksay and with me. I'm planning Ascension to heaven now, so I actually feel that I'll now stand without great light in my Ascension. Brothers and sisters, you see that I may need some extra help. Therefore, simply sitting with someone, and she may look at perfect models and with a blonde, blue eyes, most athletic and most fruitful looking. And I actually hope that very glorious reception for my son, Mr. Mark, exactly. So we like to have at least one son and then Ascension, but most likely Ascension right now. Or if necessary, we can begotten son and have the only begotten ascending. But otherwise, every year I need to be at least one son. So prepare my wife that she should come now. Otherwise, we'll hire Lord and Grace too long. So that's it. And yeah, so I actually thought I'd go to recess to again. And send any of the complimentary phones by the most digital and most complimentary messages, please. Take note, helps to ascend to heaven.